Talk about a blast from the not-so-distant past. Yes, hello, people, we back at it again. Because while everyone is getting their denim jeans smeared across the wall with the Crash Souls Insane trilogy, instead of grinding my teeth so hard they burst into dust because I keep sucking at video games real bad and oh god! I've decided to take a step back and talk about my favorite Naughty Dog franchise, the Jak trilogy, because why not? Sony plans to release the games again on PlayStation 4, and Lord knows people would love to see a Jak 4 become a thing, even though Naughty Dog has moved on to bigger, more sad and depressing things. But before we start hyperventilating about the Jak series coming back, let's take a look at the history, the reception, the reviews of all things about the Jak trilogy as a whole. And be real, I don't have some massive aha revelation to drop on y'all's soft heads, or some detailed criticism to shine a new blinding light on the series to expose it as the trash it's always been, because I'm just so smart and all video games are secretly bad because no one has ever noticed except for me. Because honestly, there really isn't much to add here. The Jak trilogy exists, their time has come and gone, and it is a series that I love along with many others, since they were at one point some of the best titles on the PlayStation 2. So let's do the thing and talk about angry boys, loudmouth animals, and eggs. And FYI guys, this video is going to be full of spoilers, and granted these games are from the early 2000s, and if you haven't played them, what the heck is your problem? You just come out of the womb or something, a little baby? But just a heads up for all you crazy Jak lore people, whoever you may be, I'm trying to give people a proper warning. But if you haven't played the Jak games, go do it. Right now. Come on. I'll wait. I mean, I made 4 beginners on all these games, you know, every single one. The videos are old and kind of crap now, but whatever, they're there. Go check them out. Yeah? Okay, moving on. So after the success of the Crash trilogy, and while Crash Racing was soon on its way out, ready to ruin friendships, Naughty Dog started development on their new project for the PlayStation 2. And the goal of this project was to create new types of technology to get away from all the loading screens and linearity from the Crash games, and specifically make an open-world platformer to please the great Sony overlords. So after a few years of development, Naughty Dog succeeded with their goal, and in 2001, Jak and Daxter hit the scene with all of its bright colors and that tight platforming that makes me want to poop myself and tests my patience until I cry. Oh, fuck! But yes, the game succeeded in what it wanted to do. It created a big, sprawling open world with no loading screens, a variety of areas and dungeons, greasy hillbillies, squawking seagulls. Heck, the game even had a day and night cycle, which seems underwhelming now, but back in the day, seeing the sun come up after a long day of licking eggs would just suck you into the world by your little boy pants. It was great. Woo! So Jak and Daxter was a real marvel of its time because of this new technology, but also because of how interesting everything was. I mean, let's be real, Crash Bandicoot, while fun and upbeat, wasn't exactly the most original idea in the world, since it was just an IP designed to counter Sonic the Bargschnarg's unstoppable popularity that has totally lasted over the years and isn't the butt of any jokes on the internet. No. None whatsoever. The point is, the Jak world was truly original because it created a universe with backstory, and it felt like a far-off, distant adventure world of a younger kid's fantasy with a strong Disney-esque vibe. I mean, at least for me. I don't know about all of you, but oddly enough, one of my childhood fantasies was to be stranded on a tropical island with nothing but a knife, so when I got to play this and go on Misty Island for the first time, I was like, sign me the up! I'ma kick all this! I digress though. Now, when I say the world was interesting, I mean the things in the world, not so much the actual plot. As we know, the game's story was very straightforward. You play as a mute whose buck-toothed loudmouth friend falls into some jelly jam and comes out an Otzel, and then you gotta travel the world in hopes to find a cure. And to my surprise as a child, that doesn't actually happen at the end, because instead you just end up stopping the Dark Eco Sage from flooding the world of Dark Eco and basically destroying the world. And Daxter remains his better-looking fluffy self, let's be real. But the story is full of fun little adventures and scenarios in each area you enter, like crossing the lava fields on the hover bike or moving that big-ass rock with a laser beam, yada 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 yada. It's short, it's sweet, and truth be told, the plot was pretty minimal, but it probably didn't help that Jak was that trademark mute protagonist so that you could project your dull, boring, bland personality onto him. But most of the story is explained through random NPCs who don't have much to add, or the occasional scenes with Kira or Samos who essentially act as exposition bots, or through the profound words of Daxter's omniscient perspective. But what really helped draw me into this world was more in the details and the mystery. Setting up a world with a long history and lore is always a good idea, and even for a kid's game, Jak and Daxter did this very well. The precursor statues that talk like they just swallowed about 6 buckets of gravel exist for a gameplay reason, yes, but they also add to the world's vibe. What are they? How are they sentient? How long have they been there? Because they seem old as sin, etc, etc, etc. It makes you feel like you popped into a world much more deep than your current story. The same can be said for Eco, which again exists for for a gameplay reason, but also comes into play for the story, since you have all the eco-sages in their little areas, making it the universal power source, aka magic with a dash of Deus Ex Machina, but it's got mysterious properties. And while Dark Eco seems kind of inconsistent with its bull crap and will kill Jak on contact, but turn Daxter into a little cutesy animal just cuz, at least Eco plays a major role in the game's plot and the entire series plot, so it's a defining feature of the Jak universe, and it helps establish the rules and wants of the land. World building, it's kind of important. But of course, Jak and Daxter was a kid's game, and plot isn't really what gets you when it comes to that, cause bright colors, ha ha, the funny mango splot, ha ha! No. Hyperactive kids are gripped by gameplay, and Jak and Daxter did take the fun stuff about Crash, but put it in an open world with open-ended missions. You still got jumping, riding vehicles, playing minigames, punching crap, and collecting crap, and collecting, and collecting, and collecting! Okay, to be honest, I've never been a huge fan of collecting stuff in video games, especially when it's tied to progressing the story. But then again, some people live for them collectibles and that 100% completion, and the shiny platinum trophies, and yada 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 yada, oh my god, there's so much stuff to do, I don't have time for all this crap, oh my god! So it's just a preference at this point, but I never got tired of that power cell animation, that's for sure. Now, Crash was all about them collectibles, as you know, and it just made sense to have the objective of the game be very similar to its predecessor, and not just uproot an iconic fun aspect of your game for creative integrity. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be doing that. That's stupid. Now, of course, with an open world, the game semi-ditched the one-hit kill and life system stuff from Crash and went for a standard health bar thingy hard doodads with whatever the heck this is, and added a plethora of checkpoints at every possible death area. Something we'll come back to, keep that in mind. So the trial and error platforming was still a thing, but less annoying since starting over levels wasn't technically possible anymore since there are no levels. Hooray for open worlds. But seriously, just chilling and checking out the little doodads of this game was great. Being able to just take your time and leave and come back to areas or games whenever you like was such a fresh breath of air. Now, as we all know, these changes to Naughty Dog's platforming formula was met with open arms. Jak and Daxter was a critical hit. It ingrained a big nostalgia factor with kids, gave Sony a brand new mascot to parade around, and even set up for a sequel with its ambiguous ending. So of course, people wanted more, and Naughty Dog was gonna give it to them. But before we talk about the big elephant in the room, it's important to explain what makes a proper sequel. And in the words of Zero Punctuation's Yahtzee Croshaw, cause the dude said it right, his words, not mine. Yeah. A good sequel takes the aspects of the first game and uses it as a jumping off point for new ideas, whether it be its gameplay, story, design, etc, etc, etc. But a poor sequel, or rather a uninspired and forgettable sequel, wallows in the original and can't seem to escape its shadow. Now, there are exceptions obviously, but some of the best game sequels are known for shaking things up, and in the case of Jak 2, it takes the good sequel concept a baby bit too far. Since Jak 2 has all the stuff established in Jak and Daxter, but sets it on fire, blows holes in its head, blasts the Lincoln Park, hands you a pack of cigarettes, and starts screaming the swears. Needless to say, this is where things got a little problematic. So 2 years after Jak and Daxter, Jak 2 came out, and obviously the biggest question on everybody's mind was, oh my god, what the heck happened? Oh! There are very rare cases where whiplash could actually kill you, but this was one of them because the tone shift was so drastic it was kind of unbelievable. Stuff got real dark real fast, and that's not even metaphorically speaking. The game literally got darker, as in a lack of light to which you can use your vision, because oh my god, I can't see anything in here! Hello? But I guess the first noticeable thing about the game was that Daxter was removed from the title entirely, since I guess in order to add the extra edge, you have to have some blunt, snappy name for your game, since that was the cool thing during the early 2000s. So I guess Naughty Dog didn't want to get shown up and drop-kick the fluff furball from the title, even though he's in this game just as much as the last one. But it's whatever. Say goodbye to Daxter, everybody. Bye! But that was just the beginning of Naughty Dog's descent into the please take us seriously phase, because it wasn't just the tone shift, but literally everything else that started to turn heads. Cause how the heck do you go from a boy wonder tries to save his friend and fight some magic spooky men in a reject Disney world, to super mature guns, action, government corruption, screaming purple dudes, people just straight up dying, obese crime lords, edgy elves, what I'm certain is drugs, time travel, monsters, and boobies. Cause it sure didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. Now apparently Naughty Dog's reasoning for this quote-unquote new direction, if you can even call it that, a more appropriate term would be aggressive adult U-turn, but whatever, I digress. But all this happened because of two reasons. Sony wanted a more more mature game to rope in those sweaty teens and their daddy's money, and Naughty Dog wanted to get away from the cutesy Crash stuff that basically transferred over into Jak and Daxter. So they just ended up hitting two birds with one stone and made Jak 2, baby's first GTA. In fact, you can kind of look at Jak 2 as more of a reimagination rather than a sequel. Yes, the game's stories do connect, but all this stuff was so different they might as well just should have started from scratch, since only a handful of core mechanics and story parts transferred over into this game. But of course, the release of Jak 2 was the start of changing times, and some might even say this was the start of the funny, happy-go-lucky platformer era's death, because these games either stopped coming out altogether or started to shift towards more dark, action-oriented concepts like how Ratchet & Clank essentially did the same thing as Jak with Ratchet Deadlock, or Gladiator depending on where you live, you little special snowflakes. But they dropped Clank's name from the title, grind stuff up, there was more shooting than ever, and there were so many explosions my PS2 melted. Oh, my poor baby eyes! The point is, Jak 2 was a Sony trendsetter after its success, as was the original Crash during its time. But obviously, this new focus was a very polarizing decision because it was only a 2-year gap between Jak and Daxter and Jak 2, and the original game was marketed as a kid's game, as in, 5 to 10-year-olds. And no better way to isolate your audience than to slap on that T rating and suddenly mom getting up in your business and not letting you buy the sequel to your favorite game. A problem I'm sure some of y'all got around cause you sinful heathens, but it was a bold choice to say the least, and definitely ruined Christmas for kids that year. But that's not to say that Jak 2 didn't benefit from this new tone. Going back to what I was saying with world building, with eco and the precursors, cause the game's new focus on action, dark creatures, and totalitarianism of all things fit the Jak universe really well because of the previous game's established concepts. Cause don't be mistaken, this kind of edgy shift was attempted after Jak 2 as well, but didn't exactly work out cause mixing cutesy fun characters with dark storytelling and violence can backfire real fast. Cause y'all remember Shadow the Hedgehog? Yeah. This is what I mean, guys. Trying to be hardcore just makes you look kinda silly sometimes and hilariously adorable. Because no, saying the word damn does not make you cool. You're a hedgehog with a gun, for God's sake! 2005 was a wild time, y'all. Now, say what you want about Jak 2 being super serious, but in the case of its story, it did work and wasn't obnoxiously over-the-top edgy about it like a biker taking a dump in his big boy pants. But speaking of story, because we do believe in subtle transitions over here, Jak 2 knew what was up, and the game's plot is so well put together considering the simplicity of the first game. This is where Naughty Dog started to dabble in their now famous Oscar bait storytelling, and I use that term loosely, keep that in mind. But they do know how to draw people in and create something worth caring about with attitude. And the first way to give people that fistful of pizzazz is with a protagonist that doesn't just stare into the camera and shrug, but with a cool new badass anti-hero that we can root for. So of course, Jak can now talk, and amazingly, the game manages to establish his character and the plot with his first sentence ever.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Not to mention, seconds after that, we get introduced to Dark Jak. If the dark theme wasn't already apparent, you gotta drive that crap home somehow. Dark Jak makes Jak more interesting with these new special powers, and shows that he has a real nasty side to him. A monster that he keeps hidden away, both literally and metaphorically. Yeah! Be real, if I was experimenting on him in prison for 2 years, I'd be really pissed too, so this stuff makes sense. Now, Daxter's character is essentially unchanged from the first, but is more enjoyable because of the better dynamic between the two characters, since Daxter isn't doing all the talking now, and is actually funny since Jak is so cold and mean in comparison. The game knows not to be too serious all the time, and still has some of the funnies and the lightheartedness that you saw in the original Jak and Daxter.
This place has too much excitement. We need to move back to the country.
So things aren't a total downer, every story needs its comedic relief after all, but the game really pushes to make Jak a more interesting and plot-driven character, and that can be said for the rest of the extended cast as well. You got Torn, who has a rod shoved up his butt but knows how to be laid back when he wants to, and he has a little hint of dark history. There's Ashlyn, who's got major daddy issues but takes no crap, kicks butt, and can step on me anytime. And then you got Crew, who is literally a big old bag of weird and childhood trauma, cause what the heck am I looking at? Sig, an actual moving building and from the future, because everything is chrome in the future, and Tess. Tess is cool. Of course, the list goes on and on. You got Pecker, the old lady, Samos and Kara back, and yada yada yada. But everyone gets their moment to shine, along with strong motivations and purpose. Heck, even the villains are pretty nifty since you get a chance to get to know them throughout the game. Baron Praxis is a ruthless leader, but cares about the survival of his city and will do anything to keep it safe for the metalheads, even if it is to its detriment. And this guy, who just needs to take a chill pill and get off my case, lordy! But seriously, Errol is pretty interesting, and there's a good rivalry between him and Jak. And Core, who is actually the main bad baddie gets some screen time as well, since he's disguised as the old dude the whole time before he pops out into his metalhead form, so you get a chance to get to know him a little bit, and it's a cool reveal because he's been there since the beginning, hiding in plain sight. So hooray for a good story loop. Very nice, very nice. But Jak 2's plot plays out like any standard anti-hero underdog scenario. You meet the resistance, they give you a rough time, you slowly take control over more parts of the city and weaken the Baron's forces while pushing back the metalheads. You meet all the colorful characters, blow up a bunch of stuff, make out with a magic rock, some revelations, character development, and then you fight the big baddie at the end and save the day. It's nothing too terribly special plot-wise, but it all flows real nice and makes for an engaging story since the game manages to create these unique characters and you feel for them in this new dystopia future. And I know I said Jak 2 might as well be a reimagining of the Jak universe, but to be honest, the plot fits pretty well despite the drastic changes since of the whole it's in the future thing. Not gonna lie, that can open its own can of worms, cause we've seen this kind of stuff crash and burn before, but Jak 2 avoids this time travel trap because time travel isn't much of a plot point. It was just a means to create a new world with Haven City without starting from scratch. The characters don't really realize they're in the future until about halfway in, and even then, they aren't that interested in changing the past, because that's normally where paradoxes pop up. Instead, the twist is just young Jak being hidden in the past to grow up safe from the metalhead leader, and that is a much better use of time travel in my opinion, and makes sense without mucking up the timeline and all that stuff. The story loops in on itself, so you don't get all the loose ends. But all this stuff adds to world building, cause my god, Haven City is cool. And sad. And really dirty. But really cool. I'll never forget that one mission where you access the castle line towers for the first time and see the whole city while jumping around for dear life. This place feels big and like it has a ton of secrets and something that has been around for a long time. It's great, and just walking around taking in all the hustle and bustle, going deep underground, exploring the woods, hovering over the open water area, walking through the bazaar is immersive as hecky. Except that freaking area in the ghetto with the brown water and the boardwalk, yeah, that place can piss right off in that one mission. Oh my god, please help me! And I guess that's a good place to talk about the actual gameplay of this game, which sticks to the normal platforming from the first, with the kicks and the twirls and the jumping and that goofy roll jump that's faster than walking, so you just roll jump everywhere and it looks like you're some deranged rabbit on drugs. It's great, I love it. But besides that, the core concepts that made the original game fun wasn't in here, and instead opted for guns, vehicles, action segments, and missions throughout the whole world to complete the story. And not to say that this wasn't fun, but it was a different type of fun. The GTA comparisons weren't just for the funny ha-has, guys. That's just how this game did things. In fact, it kind of makes light of this new mission-based structure because in an early mission, Torn asks you to collect a flag on the top of a tower, something you would have seen in the original game, because, you know, collectibles. So when you manage to get this flag, music starts playing as a callback to the power cell animation, but then it cuts short suddenly, and then the tower starts to crumble and fall. And that is what we call symbolism, kids. The age of the collectathon is over, and the era of slamming your car into walls at high speed till they explode and shotgun strapped to your arms and legs begins. Now, there are some collectibles in this game, but it's not a focus at all anymore, because, let's say it all together now, it's optional! But when it comes to the basics of Jak 2's gameplay, most of the platforming and punching combat was identical to Jak and Daxter, and is in this game a decent amount, but with the added arsenal of 4 weapons, the hoverboard, and the endless selection of vehicles, the mission combat focus was no longer just use the eco we give you and you're gonna like it, but instead all about that action, kicking butt, and killing stuff your way. Now, Dark Jak is also a gameplay mechanic, but to be honest, I feel like this is one of the biggest missteps of the game considering how meh it was. Like everything in Jak 2 you end up using consistently, but Dark Jak just seems like an afterthought, because he's really only used as a last resort since most of his useful attacks are a one-shot use kind of thing, and that's even when he's fully upgraded. I mean, he's cool to look at and you feel badass, that's for sure, but I don't know, I just wish he was utilized in a more interesting way instead of just going ham on people when you can, because he cool, he neat, he mad, and my gun does more than he does, so you know. That's a problem. Of course, one thing you might hear about Jak 2 and why some people have issues with it is that it's really McFreaking hard. And to that I say, yeah, but it's for a few reasons. Look, the game isn't asking you to do impossible stuff. Most of the challenge is very similar to things you saw in the original Jak and Daxter. Some precision platforming, kill all the enemies, beat the clock, trial and error segments, yada yada yada. Of course, some missions are just flat out obnoxious, but that's just like video game 101, you gotta make a segment everyone hates, yeah. But the actual challenge derived from 3 things. 1, your health never gets bigger despite things getting more challenging, and health cannot be gained back without health packs. Jak and Daxter had that health collection stuff with enemies. That worked. This is just terrifying, because you either do it right or you don't do it at all. 2, running out of ammo of your favorite gun makes me sad and I want to cry because I suck without my baby that spews fire. And 3, The checkpoints. You want to talk about temperamental? Try Jak 2's checkpoints, because oh my god, I have never experienced something so sporadic. Some missions have checkpoints every 3 feet, and others have one at the beginning, and that's it. I have had to restart missions moments away from beating them, and oh, the Lord is testing me today. They aren't the best, and when your health makes the room for error the size of my self-confidence, along with platforming insta-kills, that's when we start to have a problem. The difficulty spikes are just kind of all over the place, and occasionally missions end for random or bizarre reasons. Oh, the dude was too far away. Oh, that was a one-shot kill just because I felt like it. Oh, you died as you beat the mission. My bad. Here, start over. Oh, you sneezed a little too hard. BRB, deleting your saves. It's just a baby bit inconsistent, and giving up is an appropriate response after so many bullcrap moments. But despite those lovely parts of Jak 2, it is probably my favorite in the series because of the variety of missions and its story. Something about discovering the secrets of Haven City always gets to me. From the speed races to the Tomb of Mara missions, I just love how fleshed out Jak 2 feels. But of course, Jak 2 isn't normally everyone's top pick. If anything, it's probably the least popular in the series for a lot of reasons, whether it be its tone, story, gameplay, etc, etc. But at least of the people I've talked to, on average, everyone seems to agree that Jak 3 is the real breadwinner of the trilogy. So amazingly, 1 year after the release of Jak 2, just one tiny year later, Jak 3 comes out. And you'll remember what I said about good and bad sequels in case you have short-term memory loss like me, but Jak 3 is an example of a poor sequel. Now that's not to say that it's a bad game, because it's not. Like I said, this is most people's favorite for a good reason, and it's the most critically praised out of the trilogy, but Jak 3 is so much like Jak 2, the differences are super minimal, and it might as well be considered advanced story DLC with a few alterations. I mean, there's a reason why these games were made 1 year apart, because Jak 3 reused like 80% of Jak 2, and it didn't exactly scream ambitious choices, but that wasn't the point. Sony got the hardcore mature game they wanted, so when it came to closing out the series, Naughty Dog was like, screw it! If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here, have some sand. But of course, they are different games, and the biggest obvious difference with these titles was the story. Essentially acting as a continuation of the Jak 2 plot, Jak 3 begins with introducing the new villain and the new area, which you'll be spending a good chunk of your time in. But because Jak's character is best suited for a take-no-crap underdog who fights the system, the plot had to put him in that position again, since the ending of Jak 2 made Jak a hero because he saved the day and the underground took over Haven City. But nah, we can't be having that. Let's just make Jak a troublemaker again and have Haven City's government hate Jak just cuz. I mean, it's kind of explained why the people turn on him because they thought Jak had affiliations with the metalheads, but it's whatever, it's all for that dramatic tension. Moving on though, the game introduces Count Viger, a villain that is an evil Disney bad guy in every sense of the word, who acts like we have seen him before, but we haven't seen him before. But then we are told to forget about all that for a good while as we are brought to Spargus, which is Jak 3's most unique aspect in the official new city hub. Woo! Party like it don't stop! On top of that, we meet the new characters, King Deimos, Cleaver, and Seam. Now, truth be told, I have a hard time taking King Deimos seriously, because he sounds like that shriveled up grandma thing from the SpongeBob Chocolate episode, and his talks of grandeur and the arena and the desert and making stuff seem way more deadly than it actually is makes it hard for me to care for his character. The same could be said for Cleaver. He's just kind of a dumb fat diaper baby, because he can be. His purpose is to just be a hard ass towards Jak for reasons, but it's fine, I guess. He does represent the kind of attitude needed to live in a place like this, so I guess he does his job. I wouldn't say he's a bad character by any means, but he's just kind of, along with Deimos, you know, I just kind of tolerate them. They're there, they're fine, it's whatever. But Seam is hands down one of my favorite characters in the series because they are just neat and mysterious and have an amazing design, let me just say. And also, I'm not sure if Seam is male or female because the wiki says both and the game never specifies, perhaps on purpose because it does add to their mystery. Their androgyny is a prominent feature and I like it a lot. But hey, in this world where this crap matters for some frickin' reason, vote today on what sex you think Seam is just because yeah, I love discourse! But Seam is a character that really develops over time and tries to learn from Jak's perspective in order to help the world and carries a lot of the precursor history with them, giving the impression that they are very in tune with the universe. Not to mention they're kinda sassy and the game has fun with some of the moments that they share with Jak.
Yeah, we thought we'd hang out, catch some rays.
This isn't a game.
Fourth wall breaking, everybody. It'd be funny. But besides them, everyone else is borderline untouched. Torn, Ashlyn, Samos, Tess, Pecker, Sig, and Kira. for like 3 seconds. Okay, yeah, talk about underdeveloped. You know what, while I'm on this note, let me take a moment to talk about the love interest conundrum when it comes to Jak. Because in Jak and Daxter, Kira is hinted at being the love interest. 1, because she's the girl of the group, and 2, there is some minor flirting. Now, in Jak 2, Kira comes back, and her character is pretty intact, and meeting her again with Jak being all dark ecoed out creates an interesting dynamic, cause he isn't the kid she remembers anymore. He a big, spooky, angry, goatee-wearing man, and it's sexy. However, Ashlyn is also in the mix at this point, and throughout most of the game has a lot of sexual tension with Jak, and Jak even kind of plays along with this, and seems more interested in Ashlyn than Kira. And then Jak 3 comes along and just completely boots Kira off a cliff, like nah. Ashlyn's the main girl now, deal with it! She's got tattoos and dreadlocks, it's cool, yeah! And that's not to say that I don't like Ashlyn, she's great, but it's just sad that the game establishes Kira as the love interest only to have her get narked on, because she is just as cool since we've seen her character in action in the first 2 games, but in Jak 3 I think she gets like a whole 5 lines and that's it. It's kind of amazing. And very underwhelming. Now, to be honest, I'm glad the game does avoid a love triangle and just a love story in general, since that isn't what these games are about. That love crap is covered by Daxter and Tess and whatever the heck they're up to, oh god. But at least try to keep both girls in the limelight. It just hurts my little buttery soul to see a great character pooped on right in front of my eyes. And don't bring up Kira being in Jak and Daxter The Last Frontier, cause that doesn't count, sorry, bye. I have a trash-free diet, thank you. But oh no, my gripes with Jak 3's story do not end here, because while the plot does end with a bang and there's this big send-off with all the loose ends tied up, and oh, happy day, your goal in Jak 3 is a little all over the place, at least when it comes to the main villain and how much information you're given. So Count Vigor is set up as the main villain dude for a good while, but then gradually through the game, Errol from Jak 2 is hinted at being the main big baddie robot man, since he's in charge of the Crimson Guard death robot army attacking Haven City. But also on top of that, you got the metalheads who are still alive and well, because not all of them died in Jak 2, and then there are these dark old precursor creatures from space who freak me the f*** out and want to blow up the earth or some crap, and oh god, it's a lot of villains, y'all. Needless to say, the odds aren't in your favor, but these villains don't really interact with each other till the very end, and it's kind of overwhelming since there isn't much of an ultimate goal. Save Haven City is the bare basic obvious objective here, but there are so many threats to take on at once, the build up to the big showdown is a little funky. To me at least, because in Jak 2, the goal was pretty simple. Overthrow Baron Praxis and stop the metalheads. Bam! A simple epic of the century, something we can all get behind. But Jak 3 has so many threats and plot threads, it's like, where do we start, lordy? Granted, defeating so many foes does make themes seem way more epic, but definitely less focused if that makes sense. The payoff doesn't feel as good since they keep moving the goalposts, you feel? And one thing to note is that Jak 3 is, on average, about 5 hours shorter than Jak 2, so when you have a lot more going on in the shorter span of time, it can be a little disorienting and chaotic. But besides that, the overall plot is just fine. You gotta help the peeps in need, whether it be Deimos or Torn, meet some old friends, gain mystic items to become more powerful with all the light and dark eco crystals, blow up some robots and some metalheads, along with exploring more of the lost history of the world, because Lord knows you missed a lot between Jak 2 and Jak and Daxter. But as a whole, it's good and less dark than Jak 2, since it tends to have a lot more lighthearted moments and focuses more on the action and scale rather than dark grittiness, although it does have its fair share of dark stuff, like actual dark stuff, specifically the dark precursor creatures who are a little terrifying and gross looking, but also the whole metalhead section of the city that just green ooze and dark eco. Yeah, that place is also a big old bag of yikes. Okay, maybe I lied. Maybe it is a little more visually darker and grosser than Jak 2, but, you know, other than that, yeah, everything's a little more kick in the pants, yeah. Think Mad Max rather than, you know, Sin City. Yeah? Okay. Moving on. Now, the plot is slightly messy, of course, but strikes a good balance and really shows off the best of Jak and Daxter's character. But the one thing that Jak 3's plot does super well is expand on the precursor lore even more, and has one of the best reveals in Naughty Dog history. When chasing Count Vigor to the planet's core, when you finally come into contact with the legendary, mysterious precursors to ascend as one of them, it is revealed that the precursors have been Otzels all along, who have been doing the whole smoke and mirrors Wizard of Oz technique to overzealous their power, and give the illusion that they're these big omnipotent beings, and it's just an amazingly hilarious moment.
If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Errol by now.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's real good. In this moment, it reminds you that Jak was at heart a kid's game, and it's a great throwback and explanation as to why Daxter turned into an Ottsel in the first place, since Dark Eco contains the genetic makeup of their creators. It's a cute, fun twist, and hands down one of the highlights of the Jak trilogy. Now, another bigger twist that seems very try-hard, if that works, is the whole Deimos is my dad and Jak is Mar thing. Hilariously, right before the precursor Ottsel twist, it is revealed that Jak is Deimos' son, a dramatic, oh no, my dad moment, and that Count Vigor is the reason he got separated from his father, which is a fine twist since throughout the game Deimos and Jak have some father-son bonding moments, and Jak even mentions to Deimos he didn't know his father, and Deimos is taken back by this a little, and that's what we call foreshadowing, yeah! But revealing that Jak is a part of the House of Mar is fine, but the whole death dad stuff is a little melodramatic. Just a little. I mean, it's nice to know Jak's real origins and to not have him be some random everyday guy. Instead, he's a part of an important lineage, so it makes his talents and skills more justified, if that makes sense. But the one thing that would be nice is if they gave him a different name that wasn't Mar, cause it confused the crap out of me for a long time, cause I thought he was the original Mar, cause time travel exists in this world and all that crap, and I don't know, other names exist, Deimos, like George or Larry or anything! Besides all that story stuff, most people like Jak 3 because it's more fun and less likely to make you go bald from all the hair pulling, and for the most part, the gameplay is unchanged, but like how Jak 2 evolved from Jak and Daxter, Jak 3 just has more stuff. Like lots of stuff. And the biggest of this stuff was the Doom Buggy cars, or sand rails depending on what you prefer. But a good majority of Jak 3's missions, and when I say a good majority, I mean like half of the game, revolved around these cars in some way, shape, or form. Like racing or collecting stuff in the desert or destroying cars, and the list goes on and on. Basically, there was so much driving in Jak 3, you can't be surprised that a driving game followed it right after, cause Naughty Dog really likes racing games for some reason. Now obviously, if driving wasn't your thing, then Jak 3 could easily get on your nerves, specifically when you can die from free falls or those McFrickin' road cars that want to make out with my fender and take me out to dinner and need to learn some frickin' personal space, holy crap! But the Doom Buggies were fun since you got cars with variety and were a big shake-up gameplay-wise, even if the missions got kinda samey. And can we all please agree that the jumper car is the best in the game? Cause if you don't think so, you were using it wrong, cause you know, you got bombs and the jumping and the borderline flying. Other than the cars though, everything else was kind of the same except for the extra guns, and to be honest, I don't have much to say about that. They went from 4 to 12, but because of how ammo was dispensed and how limited most of the enemy attacks and types were, most of the guns were a little redundant. Not to say that they weren't cool, cause getting new guns and seeing what they did for the first time was awesome, but overkill is the word of the day. The second phase yellow reflect gun can get you through like 90% of this game if you just fill the room full of bullets and just watch the ricochets kill everything. It's a little hilarious, not gonna lie. Cause you get the Peacemaker kinda late, the Volcom never has enough bullets in it no matter how many upgrades I give it, the scatter gun's range is limited as crap, and even that massive 3-form Peacemaker mini nuke only gets one shot, and yeah, it annihilates everything for about 2 seconds cause another wave of enemies just started flooding in, and yeah, no, yellow reflect gun is best girl, sorry. Now, Dark Jak is back, but he still has the same issues he did in Jak 2, but instead, Jak 3 also has Light Jak, and this is the kind of stuff I wanted to see from Dark Jak originally, since Light Jak has really useful powers and is used to get past certain parts of the game. From the time slowdown to the flying, the shield, and the ability to heal yourself, Light Jak is real good and is utilized way better now. But the one thing Jak 3 does a lot better than Jak 2 in the gameplay department is the checkpoints and the not dying part. Naughty Dog got their priorities straight and made it so the checkpoints are more frequent, consistent, and more importantly, less painful! Not to mention, throughout the game, you'll gain more heal slots, and with the Light Jak heal ability, Jak 3 is considerably less frustrating than Jak 2, cause Lord knows it needed these adjustments, and I do think that kind of plays into why people tend to like Jak 3 a little more than Jak 2. If anything, the game is too easy, since you can borderline break the combat by buying cheats and upgrades in the secrets menu at any time if you have enough precursor orbs, and those things were like bad jokes in this video. They're everywhere, guys! Now, Jak 3 has a lot more areas than Jak 2, but that comes with a little asterisk attached to it. Keep in mind, I love Haven City and its variety from Jak 2, but when it comes to Jak 3, since the whole city is constantly under attacks and is at war, most if not all of the city is filled with constant fighting at one point or another. And it kinda just takes me out of it since I don't feel like there is a chance to breathe. I'm not sure how to explain this, but it just feels weird. There is so much chaos, so much crap, it doesn't feel like a real city anymore, and it just takes the fun out of it for me. Granted, I do like how the fighting gradually spreads across the city as you progress through the story, and it does help the vibe of war and the end of days and all that stuff, but on a personal level, I don't know, it just feels funky to me. I don't know if anyone else feels the same, just throwing this out there. Of course, Spargus is the new calmer, more actual city now, and I like that, but it's small. It's really small. But with all the stuff Jak 3 added, it did send off the series really well. It feels like the biggest, it ties up the loose ends, Daxter gets pants finally, and the ending is satisfying. But it did leave things open for more games, but as we know, Naughty Dog likes to move on and try new things, but not without making that racing game, yeah! Woo! But seriously, I don't have much to add to Jak X Combat Racing. It's a fun game with an okay story, and I like it a lot. And honestly, it might get its own video one day, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Hit that sub button for more, just saying. But say what you want about Naughty Dog not continuing the series, but I do think it was a good idea. The Jak series ended well, and they could have easily dragged it out, but decided to end on a high note, and that's something I wish we would see more often from series like this. And for y'all who are about to blow up those comments, again, as a reminder, no, The Lost Frontier does not count as a real Jak game since it wasn't made by Naughty Dog, and is a good example of when you try to stretch out stuff past its prime. It just can't compete, and it's kinda crap. But the Jak Trilogy is seen as some of the best PS2 games because of the risks it took, for the push for bigger, better things, and for a world that was created with passion and originality. It is a series that raised the bar when it came to world building and game design, and I hope that Naughty Dog continues this push for new ideas, and to always have the foresight to leave a franchise on a high note, because that's what made the Jak Trilogy feel whole. So that wraps up my look back on the Jak games, and I'm sorry if I didn't cover everything. They're big games with lots going on, but please do share your thoughts and feelings about the trilogy if you have any, because the Lord knows these games were a lot of people's childhood back in the day. So please hit me up with all that passion, alrighty? Tell me all the good, the bad, the ugly, and tell me how much you hate the color orange or something like that. I don't know. Lay it on me, kiddos. Toodles. Yo, yiggity yo, welcome to the end of the video. So this was definitely a passion project, something I've been meaning to do for a while now, and I do want to continue doing these kinds of trilogy retrospects, thoughts, feelings, opinions, if you will, because they're neat, they're fun, and they take a really long time to edit, but whatever. But just an FYI and a shameless plug, y'all, this channel is sponsored by GameFly. GameFly is a great cheap service where you can rent out new games so you don't waste $60 on trash you regret buying. Yes guys, GameFly is indeed still very much around, and if you click the link below, you'll be able to get a 30-day free trial, and you can get whatever the heck you want. I don't know, treat yourself, but you know, free rentals for 30 days. Go for it, alright? It helps me out a lot. Thank you. Other than that, don't forget to follow my social medias. I have a Twitter, which I'm incredibly active on, a Twitch where I stream often. You can come hang out with me and talk to me directly, along with other things, Instagrams, Tumblr, all the things are down below. Hit something, any something, follow social media, make my day, do the thing. I'ma go. It's really late, alright? Bye-bye.